This time on the Highland Woodworker.
And that's most of what this work is about. It's about trying to push an envelope a little bit here and there.
Master furniture maker and designer Caleb Woodard gives us a tour of his gallery and workshop. See some of his fabulous pieces and learn how he uses curves and lighting to create dramatic works of functional art like this. Plus, Popular Woodworking Magazine explains why using a blunt chisel is a pretty sharp move for some projects. These stories and more this time on the Highland Woodworker. Hello, I'm Charles Brock and I'm a Highland Woodworker. I've been a customer of Highland Woodworking for years. That's where I get my fine woodworking tools. They have the brands I need and the instruction that I need too. Go to highlandwoodworking.com and look at their wide array of tools. And you can be just like me and have them delivered to your door. They've been doing that since 1978. Master woodworker Caleb Woodard is making waves in furniture design. His unique style blends sculptured movement with function, and the results are just captivating. Let's go to Caleb's Springfield, Tennessee workshop and meet this second-generation woodworker and cutting-edge designer in our Moment with a Master. Caleb Woodard, what a pleasure. I tell you what, I like starting here because that's where everything kind of starts, doesn't it?
It is. A lot of the process begins with the design stage. So, for instance, if you look at this dining table right here, it's a maquette for a full-scale dining table that eventually made it to, I think it was the Hamptons. So we start off with concept sketches, go to the client with that, and then if it's a new piece like this, which I haven't done before, then we move to making this scaled maquette, which is at 1/15 scale for the final product. So in the end, this is roughly a 12-foot dining table.
Wow.
That was made for the client.
Now, they are not CAD drawings or anything like that. You just put pencil to paper?
Pencil to paper, a lot of client confidence, a lot of seeing past work, understanding what we do best, and getting them to buy into the vision of the piece.
Well, people have bought in, and folks, you're about to see some great work. It starts here. Take us on a tour.
Yeah, so this is, up front here is where we have a lot of our finished pieces, and they range from just ideas that I've done. They might not even be for sale, but just pieces that I've kind of worked out in my mind. A lot of times I'll use the carved tables almost as these quick sketches. So we take solid pieces of log, and they're more quickly realized than, say, a traditional piece of furniture where it's a case good, and you have to go through all the articulation of solving the problems of construction and design, everything like that. But being able to work out ideas that I can later translate to formal pieces of furniture, or maybe they will just be these small side tables that are carved.
I am surrounded by just some beautiful sculpture, some beautiful lines, and some great detail. Show me some more.
Yeah, so a lot of the other work that we do, you can see around here, are carved panels. So a lot of pieces like this wall sculpture right here, where we hand chisel and incise, and we call this the allegorical series, where we work through different themes that I let usually the viewer kind of interpret on their own, but just going through and trying to work out a lot of the influences that I'm kind of going through as I design the pieces. There's 3 other woodworkers that work here. One of them's my father, but all the different guys, they have their own bench, and they're working on different pieces at different phases of the project, everything like that. We do hand dovetail all of our drawer boxes. My father does all that work and tends to do that on his bench right here.
Is he more of a traditional woodworker?
He is a traditional woodworker. He's the one who taught me how to do traditional woodworking, mortise and tenon, joinery, dovetailing, everything like that. So I gladly pass on all of those tedious dovetails to him still. So not much has changed since childhood.
So you add the art to traditional woodworking.
That has always been my passion. Even growing up, having to do the dovetails, having to do all the traditional joinery, long before a lot of the nice tools came along like dominoes and all those types of things, I was more interested in doing the shaping on the outside and the decoration and all that.
Your joinery, dovetails, floating tenons.
Whatever works best.
Yeah.
I'm not picky about that. I don't try to make up the work for myself. I will always want a hand dovetail drawer. I don't know why that's stuck with me for so long.
Yeah.
I still have this thing in me where I love to see the scribe line still.
Yes.
The scribe line says that somebody sat there and diligently did the work. And for whatever reason, hundreds of pieces we've made, thousands, no one's ever asked me for a hand dovetail drawer box, and yet I still insist it's got to be done that way. It just feels right.
Yeah, it looks right, feels right.
It's right.
Yeah, thank you. Now, your dad as inspiration, were there others that have inspired you?
Oh, growing up, looking at all those design books throughout the years, the works of Castle and Maloof and Nakashima and Powell, like you had all the New Hope guys up there doing great stuff. They've always been inspiring to me. I've also found a lot of inspiration from sculptors. So, growing up looking at Henry Moore or Noguchi, Hepworth, the greats like that, trying to figure out what the emotional impact of the work that they did had on people really influenced my furniture design.
Well, it's important to study those that came before you.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I even keep old chairs hanging up over there, some shaker styles and things like that, because knowing how they understood the material, the reverence for it, and how they found solutions for making a simple but beautiful thing interact in their daily life from the work of their own hands is still really at the core of what we do here.
Wow. Well, you've got a piece over here that I wanted to explore from the back side.
All right.
Now, you've got all this great sculpting on the front and the sides, but I discovered that this is the way you stabilize everything. Tell us about that.
So we start off by doing the full case build of the piece, and with our grain orientation wrapping the whole way around. And then what we want to do is to create the flow and be able to design and lay out the piece. We'll blank the drawer fronts. In this case, it's so big that it's actually already been separated in two, but the grain matches across. And then we block them into here through the back so that while we're shaping out the front side, everything's stabilized in place. And these are just held in place here with screws. This is going to be a drawer cavity, so we're not terribly concerned about where the screw locations. When it's a cabinet with doors or something like that, we make sure that we fasten the pieces down in locations where the back paneling will end up going. So we don't have to worry about that being shown. But yeah, everything's held in place strong so that then we can then shape the outside. And if you look out on the inside, it's relatively simple. It's like any other case build almost.
Exactly, yeah. But that allows you, what you do back here allows you to put a lot of time and thought into sculpting some gorgeous lines.
Right, and for instance, even for the back paneling, which you make our own tongue and groove back paneling, to allow for this amount of movement on this thickness of material like this, we won't actually rabbet the wood around there. We'll actually add strips around that will then hold the back paneling on with then the trim piece that goes around that.
I think I saw a bunch of those back there.
Always making paneling, nonstop.
There you go. When you turned off the light, this piece just exploded with movement.
Yeah, the thing about movement is really shadows are what you're working with. People think it's the light, but it's the shadow that you're creating. So when we're figuring out a piece like this, we're always trying to be aware of where your major light sources are going to come from, overhead typically, and then creating these bold movements, but also adding in some that come this way so that there's light coming in from windows or doors to the side. You're creating this strafing light moving across this way as well.
I enjoy feeling this because I can tell this is more undercut on the top side of the line. Now, what do you call these? You have a name for these? We haven't talked about that.
I don't have I've just basically the movements.
Okay.
The movements of the piece. So one of the things that you're always trying to create, when you're dealing with a limited amount of material, right? So you've got 2 3/4, 3 inches for this, the case of this piece. So you're trying to get the most out of your material without going through it. What we found is if you come in sharper on the radius on the underside of these right here, it creates that look of depth more, and then you can flatten these out going this way some more. So there's a bunch of little tricks that we're trying to do to deceive the eye and give what is such a stationary thing a lot of movement. The idea that all of a sudden it came to rest. The other thing that we do is we build out the corners more so, because so much of when you look at a piece, you're not looking at it straight on in its rectilinear form. You're really catching a lot of angle with the thing. So taking away a lot of material in these corners where your sight line is going to be most apparent is really important to creating that movement.
Well, and you find this shape right here, this serpentine shape, in so many chests of drawers.
You find it. There is that kind of OG, that S form that's been around for ages that you find in nature. You know, the Hind's leg, feminine form, everything like that. That's a very consistent thing. The other thing that you'll notice that we're trying to do is, even though we've got the piece, this is something I've had to learn over the years, even though you're trying to create this broad sense of movement, you're trying to create this balance of uniformity but also tension. So here we have, we have a center leg right here, and there'll be another one added into the back. But instead of bringing it up equally on each side, there's a movement that's created there. So you're trying to create a little bit of tension. Not everything is centered, not everything is balanced on each side. You've already established your overall form on the piece by it being a rectangle. But trying to create the movements that are a little bit different each side gives you that tension that really brings your eye to the piece.
This is kind of balanced up here, the way
it is balanced. And so what I'm trying to be aware of right here is I've got a center divider with joinery coming up into the top. So when I come back and do this movement back this way, I don't want to run into that. So the same thing happens on the corners, like how I resolve these on these top edges. I have to constantly be aware of where my joinery is, down here on the leg from the front stretcher, or along the sides here where the bottom comes into the sides.
Because you don't want to hit your joinery.
You do not want to hit your joinery. It's a hard patch to make.
It's happened before.
Yes, it has. All right, so if you come up here, this is where I tend to spend most of my time. And it's where I can work out quickly some basic ideas of pieces, work on sketches for designs for clients, and also do a lot of the more quiet work with all the hand chisels. So out here we keep most of our lumber that's going to be ready to use. And what we try to do is, whenever possible, to saw and air dry all of our wood, especially with walnut, because what I've found over the years when working with walnut is air dried, all wood, but really walnut especially, air dried is far superior. So they're really rushing the wood so much through the commercial process right now. I don't know if you've ever run your board through the table saw, and it's either pinching really bad or splitting apart. Right. They're rushing that process of drying so much, and you lose a lot of the pretty color. If you hand carve, you'll find that air dried is just like carving beautiful butter. I mean, it's just wonderful. You get into that commercial steam stuff, it's chippy, it's splintering apart, and there's so much tension that's baked into the wood. We typically use in a range between 4/4 to 12/4. So the big challenge for woodworkers is making that investment in material, if they're going to air dry especially, where they're going to be waiting for that 12/4 board for 3.5 years before they can be, So what we do is we've got a number of logs, so we get them sawed, or we try to find somebody that has some that was air dried themselves and stickered, and we'll buy that from them. But then have everything ready. We keep date stamps on each stack so that we know how long it's been air drying outside. At some period then we'll move it in here when we feel like it's gone past that season long enough. And then we make sure that there's a period of additional climate adjustment going on inside. Even if it's kiln dried that's been stored out here, we want to move it in there for a few weeks before we use it. We'll also join and plane, sticker, let it set up over the weekend edged up, letting the air move around, letting it relax and do its thing in our environment. But if it's air dried stuff, we'll usually try to move it into the studio. We got storage space in the back there where it'll be in there for 6 months to a year before it starts going into the rotation of use.
And you make accommodations for that thick wood when you build the piece. I think you have a piece over here that we could show what you do to it inside. So this is the piece you wanted to show me as an example of keeping wood technology in mind.
Right. So, you know, anyone that's considering doing any type of lamination process always needs to keep some rules in mind. One of them is grain direction the same, keeping it moving the same way. The other thing is, do not laminate up beyond a certain thickness. 4 inches is pushing it on that. Because what happens is, you've got a piece like this, even though it's got finish on it, it's decorated, everything's chip carved all the way around nicely, moisture is always kind of trying to come in from the outside. So if the center of your work is not getting any moisture, it's staying stable. It's staying at its mass. All the wood around the outside is trying to bring in and then let go of moisture. So it's wanting to expand, it's wanting to contract. So the trick is on a piece like that, keep it hollow. Keep a maximum thickness that you worked around there and allow the shell of the piece to move freely without being bound by this core that's never doing anything. It's got to be able to move around. So
now you've got some surface here on the inside that can also breathe.
That's
and
it.
Surface on the outside.
You're getting the same. And you'll see this act not just, you know, on something like this that's laminated. You'll see this reaction happening as well on, say, cabinet doors, where the inside of the cabinet isn't quite having the same environment as the outside of the cabinet. It's another reason why it's very important when you have pieces, especially laminated works like this, that you try to stress to the client or yourself, if it's going to go in your home, don't put it near a register. Don't put it where you've got a dramatic change or window on one side of the piece of furniture and different on the other. That really wreaks havoc on wood, and it wants it to kind of cup towards or away depending on how the growth rings are going. So just always be aware of that you're just trying to be gentler on the material. Allow it to breathe all the way around, whether inside or out, and to move on its own. Great
information, Caleb. You know, with the type work you do, what do you want to be known for as you go forward? What's your legacy, you think?
I would hope that it would be that I was someone that really tried to do singular work as much as possible. You know, to an extent, we all stand on the shoulders of everyone that's gone before us. I didn't invent lamination. I've read the books of Wendell Castle, the lessons that he taught on that. I've interpreted it my own way. But I think for myself personally, it is that I was always trying to do work that was my own as much as possible. That I was always trying, failing over and over again. And that's most of what this work is about. It's about trying to push an envelope a little bit here and there and really trying to do your own work.
Coming up, we'll go back to Caleb's shop for a lesson in sharpening. But first, Popular Woodworking shows us how a really dull tip can turn into a very fascinating technique. Don't go anywhere. You're watching the Highland Woodworker.
I'm just an average, down-to-earth woodworker. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably about a 5. But one place I score a perfect 10 is right here, and I plan on keeping all 10. That's why I have a SawStop table saw. And there's more. Plenty of power, superior dust collection, and absolute accuracy. These features have made it the best-selling cabinet saw in America. Let Highland Woodworking help you put a SawStop in your shop.
There's 4 words that Lee Tools lives by. 4 words that mean quality joinery to take your projects to the next level. Whether it's dovetails, box joints, or mortise and tenon. And we'll even help you clean up. Those 4 words: better tools, better results.
Whiteside Machine Company has been in business for over 30 years providing customers with quality router bits. Fine Woodworking Magazine has declared Whiteside router bits best overall and best value when compared against 17 other brands. No matter the router application, they have the type and profile of carbide router bit you need. When you put a Whiteside router bit to work in your shop, it is guaranteed to make you smile.
You know, occasionally we come across a tip or a technique that really defies logic. And this is one of those. So I was watching some videos from one of my favorite plane makers by the name of Bill Carter out of the UK. And Bill does some very specialty things while he's making his planes. He makes little wooden planes, he makes little metal body planes. And while he is shaping a lot of this stuff by hand, he has a technique that he calls the blunt chisel technique. Kind of sounds like some Shaolin Kung Fu, but it's actually really quite cool and it defies logic. So when Bill's working on a small item, like a wedge for a plane, a lot of the times he is shaping kind of a swell or a hump on the back of it. And if you would use a sharp chisel across the grain, it would really just pick up those fibers and pull them out. So instead what Bill does is he takes and knocks the end off of a chisel. So this one obviously is quite dull, or blunt as Bill puts it, and he does that with a simple bench grinder. So he sets his tool rest to where he's basically at 90 degrees to the wheel, and he turns the chisel or the gouge upside down, and he simply knocks the tip off, and it's real fast. And that's all there is to it. So what that leaves me with is an area on the end of this chisel that is dull. And you might think, oh, obviously you're taking the end off and you're creating a burr. Well, not really, because we sharpen that chisel and Bill sharpens his chisel upside down. So the burr is actually on the top side near the bevel. But what it creates is a sharp 90-degree corner. And that works really well for paring across the grain. And it works well on end grain. It works really nicely to get into tight little areas, like where this swell meets the flat part. And with a sharp chisel, there's really very, very little sanding that needs done when you cut across it with a dull chisel. One thing that's cool as well is you can do the same thing with gouges. So for different radiuses, you can use different sweeps of gouges and do the same thing. And it cuts very cleanly. Now it will blow out the backside of your workpiece, so when Bill's making something like this wedge, he cuts it extra wide, and then he uses a shooting plane to bring this down to width to fit inside the plane. And this works especially well on really hard and really dense woods. So a lot of exotics, rosewoods and ebonies, boxwoods, works very well on. And I found it an invaluable tip and technique to have in my shop, especially when I'm working on small specialty stuff, maybe like a hand plane like Bill makes. So I have a whole different set of gouges in different sweeps that I have knocked the tips off of, and a couple of these chisels. So whenever I have some tough, chicky grain or something I need to get in and clean up, usually I'll reach for a blunt chisel.
Still ahead, Caleb Woodard shows us how he gets his tools really sharp. You're watching the Highland Woodworker. Highland Woodworking stocks a wide selection of RIKON power tools, known for their innovative design and rugged durability. Highland has sold thousands of RIKON's industry-leading bandsaws with sizes to fit every woodworking need, from the compact, affordable 10-inch model to competitively priced 14 and 18-inch models. Shop us also for RIKON's reliable planers, lathes, and professional low-speed grinder, all with an exceptional 5-year warranty. RIKON Power Tools. Meet the Bora Centipede, the lightweight and portable workshop table that supports up to 3,000 pounds, stores in a small space for tight shops, and opens into a work table to bring your work to a comfortable height. This makes the perfect companion for your track saw. Comes with X cups and hold downs to secure your work. Just add the Bora workbench top and you've got a great auxiliary table anywhere in your shop. Upgrade your shop today. If you can't make it to Highland Woodworking in Atlanta, Georgia, you can shop online at highlandwoodworking.com. They're great at getting what you want to your shop quick. Let Highland's legendary wood slicer resaw blade help make it easy for you to get great results sawing thick lumber into thinner boards. The wood slicer is designed to cut much faster, smoother, and quieter than ordinary bandsaw blades. You'll be amazed at how smooth a surface you'll get with a wood slicer. Its variable tooth pattern greatly reduces noise and vibration. Order a wood slicer from Highland Woodworking for your bandsaw today. Your textured panels here are just beautiful, and they're all hand carved. Yes, sir. Right? Yeah. So to do fine work like this, you've got to be able to sharpen.
You have to, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, if you've got your tools well maintained, you're not dropping them, you're taking care with how, you're setting the tools down with the bevel ups, you're not worried about gouging the piece on there. Keeping them sharp is relatively easy. I find that if I'm doing a lot of carving, I can probably get away with stropping 4 out of 5 times, something like that, if I'm just moving to the strop real quick. But when it does come time to sharpen, I've tried them all over the years. I know everyone's got their different technique, and there will be a million videos out there that can probably show this better. But this is just how I found it's fastest and easiest for me to keep my tool edge up, because I'm just trying to get back to the material as quickly as possible and get my work done without having to worry about a dull tool slipping and causing more damage or cuts or something like that. So all I'll typically do, and I'll use a big one here to kind of demonstrate it just because it's a little bit easier, is I like diamond stones. The maintenance is easy. They take away material really quick. I just keep a water bottle on hand and a rag. And then what I'm going to be doing is, the trick is when you're moving across like this, you don't want to be sliding your chisel in an arc like this, your gouge. You want to try to keep it perpendicular to the material as much as possible so that you keep your bevel consistent across the top of there. So if I need to move to kind of a slightly coarser stone like this, I try to find out when I've lost my shadow right there, and I'm down on the material, and then I'm moving my whole body side to side like this right here. I'll do it slow, but trying to keep the piece straight across there. So you kind of have to roll the hips along there like that. I'll then move quickly down stones, because I know where I'm at.
So what's the...
I like to let the piece, the chisel, roll in my hand like this, so I'm not worried about kind of distorting the arc or anything like that when I'm doing it.
Okay.
Once I've done that and I've kind of moved down the grits, I just throw a quick spritz on the inside. Simple, natural stone. This one's been broken like 2 or 3 times. I hold it firmly, flat on the inside like this right here. I might give it one more swipe like this, and then once more on the inside.
You're removing the burr?
I'm trying to take off that burr that got hinged this way. The real process of taking that off is going to be when you strop, though, in my opinion. So I come over here real quick, got a little red rouge put on here. And then when I drag, I start on one corner and I try to keep the chisel at the same angle, and you can see that burr kind of pulling that strop that way. And then, believe it or not, I just go like this on the inside.
There you go, and I think you're missing some hair.
I am missing some hair. But if your chisel is sharp, it just shaves right off like that. And that's a chisel that's ready to use. So just that quick.
What were your grit ranges here?
Oh, I think we started maybe 600 down to, oh, I can't even remember, maybe 1,200 or something. It's not that, or 2,000, sorry. 2,000. It's 2,000 down here. It's not that high. If I can shave the hair off my arm, I'm ready to woodwork.
There you go. Yeah, and it's got to be about the woodwork.
It is.
Yeah.
100%. Oh, but the main thing is just keeping your chisels in the right shape. One little nick. Nobody wants to see that scratch mark when they're working their wood. Mm-hmm. So just really take care. Always be cognizant of where you're placing the materials, not on the edge of the bench. Mm-hmm. You know, here we have a concrete floor, so a drop chisel is a bad deal.
And so if you take care of it here, then you don't have to keep coming back and fixing areas, or because there's just not time for maybe how many, 1,000 elements there?
100%. And when you're trying to muscle through the work because you haven't kept your chisel sharp, that's when you make mistakes. Yeah. On the bad end, you cut yourself, but in the better end, you're doing big slips and things are flying through. And the kind of work we do, which is kind of these controlled divots and all of these elements like that, there's no room for error. So you're really trying to avoid those costly slips that cause a big gouge. You have to redesign the whole thing, hours spent. So really taking good care of your tools is important.
And they feel so good when you cut them by hand.
They do, don't they?
I'm excited to tell you about a product called Timbermate. I've been using it for years, and it fills cracks and deviations and knot holes and things that you just would not be able to fill with some of the older products. In fact, it makes some great claims right here on the container. It says it will not shrink, sink, crack, or fall out. It accepts all stains and finishes and can be mixed with oil or water-based tints for custom color. It's almost a perfect product. In fact, it might be one. If it dries out, all you have to do is add just a little bit of water and it's ready to go again. Even if it's just sitting there dried out in the container, add some warm water and you can revive it. I've never been able to do that with a wood putty type product before. Now, I've got a piece of walnut here, and I went through the 13 colors and the neutral base, and I selected 2 to use on this, and I'm going to take a putty knife and put some on. Yeah. And this piece of walnut has a lot of brown and has some black since I'm working around some knots. Now, here on this crack, if I kind of build up all sides of the crack there and come this way too, then it has a great quality of being able to actually hold that edge. All right. And I've never found a product that would do that before. All right, so we're going to let this dry. Now, I'm going to speed it up just a bit. It does dry quickly, but I'm going to use a hair dryer, and right before your very eyes, it's a water-based product. Well, you can drill it, you can sand it, you can scrape it, and you can actually thin Timbermate down and use it as a wood filler on ring porous woods just like walnut. Makes a great grain filler. All right, back here to this stubborn edge crack. Now look at this. See, it falls right off. You can save on your sandpaper also. It doesn't gum up the sandpaper. Got a little bit of oil on this rag right here, and I just sanded it to 80 grit there. Let's see what it looks like. That's Timbermate for fixing your timber, mate.
Improve your woodworking experience. Sign up for Wood News Online, a monthly newsletter showcasing the latest news, tips, and classes Highland Woodworking has to offer. By signing up, you'll receive the latest episode of the Highland Woodworker, special store promotions, and Wood News Online delivered straight to your inbox. Sign up today.
Well, that's all the time we have for this episode of the Highland Woodworker. Be sure to check us out on social media, and until next time, I'm Charles Brock, and I'm a Highland Woodworker.